Jacksonville. The child was born but couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts for poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history, this land of flowers.
From WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network, the week that was on the 2nd of September 2017, the first show for the month of September. There was some scheduling here. Our Labor Day show, which would fall on Monday. Of course, we have the Monday morning quarterback. Will be on Sunday, so we'll be tampering with the schedule a bit. And normally we have our May Day show, which is our labor-focused show. But we also do one on Labor Day. Our late great partner, the broadcaster par excellence, Jerry Pippin, used to do it. But we'll get it together, and we'll get that over. Also, Numbers Man, that's our macroeconomic program. It will be up this week. Job numbers are down a bit for the month of August. But that's to be expected in the summer months. Nothing unusual there. Let's just preview it a bit here. We're not going to do very much with it. We'll just take a quick look. If we can. We'll try to take a quick look at from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Nonetheless, this is for August 2017. 165 jobs were added. 165,000 jobs were added in August. Off a bit, the rate of unemployment and redundancies at 4.4. And now the Hurricane Harvey part of the numbers are not there. This was before it was taken. A quick overview here for adult men. It was 4.1%. Adult women 4%. For teenagers 13.6%. For Europeans 3.9%. For African Americans 7.7%. Asians 4%. Latinos 5.2%. Little change was shown there. So the labor force participation rate is 62.9. It's almost 63. Was unchanged from July. Enough of this. And, of course, the story of the week obviously was Hurricane Harvey. We'll go to some of that news now and look at it from two different perspectives. One, the African-American perspective. This is from the Daily Cause, an article there on how it impacted African-Americans in that area. I'll go to it first, and then we'll get to an article that came from the judge, Paula, on Houston and what is going on there. But nonetheless, this is written on the 24th by Kelly Marcus on Hurricane Harvey. The current FEMA director is working to rewrite, now this applies to everyone, the federal flood insurance program. That is, the federal government's bears less of the cost when a disaster strikes and flooding occurs. Now this would go to private insurance types. In southeast Texas and the coastal Bend regions of the state are expected to be the hardest hit. While Latinos make up about 40% of the state's population, Texas has one of the largest African American populations in the country, and they are concentrated in the area that is predicted to be the hardest hit. For example, counties already declared disaster areas by Wheelchair Abbott. He's the governor there. In a statement, Abbott announced that he had preemptively declared state's emergency for Austin, Calhoun, Chambers, Colorado, we won't name all these, Fort Bend, Galveston County, Harris County, that is Houston, Jackson, and Jefferson, and so forth and so on. Jefferson County is 34% African American. The other counties like Harris, Galveston, Jasper, and Colorado have large African American populations between 13 and 20%. Collectively, African Americans are the most populous minority in southeast Texas, and they're scattered around. This demographic data is important because it tells the story of who is likely to be impacted in the short. This hurricane is going to do incredible damage to areas where African people live, and many areas in positions to elevate or financially withstand the impact. For example, African female population in Texas, 55 and older, reside in Harris and Dallas counties. Many are also living in rural areas. Seniors are disproportionately impacted by hurricanes. They often live in areas vulnerable to floods and storms and floods, and have difficulty with transportation. Can be a socially isolated. Example: over half the people who died during Katrina were 65 and older. That was in New Orleans. They drowned or had other medical conditions that caused their death after being trapped in their homes. Noteworthy also is a high percentage of people in poverty in Texas who are African American women, especially single parents. 24% of African Americans below the poverty level. Single mothers make up 65%. African women are particularly a marginalized group. In Texas, not only are they living in poverty, Texas has the worst maternal mortality rate in the developed world. African women in the state are more likely to die from pregnancy complications than are Europeans or Latinos. While the state does not have a group of lawmakers who have formed a mortality task force to look into the issue, Republicans are much more interested in passing bills to limit access to abortions or cutting family planning funds. That means they aren't as all are worried about saving the lives of African women, and the hurricane is unlikely to be any different. The damage in this event will be severe. Unfortunate duration of this event will create significant stress on food supplies, gas supplies, which has already happened, and energy and day-to-day functionality. Roughly 1,400 deaths because of Katrina. Most were poor, elderly African Americans. Almost 10 years later, the city has 100,000 less. This is the city of New Orleans, of African American residents. Their incomes are substantially less before the hurricane. The European population has decreased slightly, but weathered it out. Child poverty rate was at about 40%. Violent crime remains persistent. This is in New Orleans. Texas and the Hurricane-Harvey aren't likely to be exceptions here. And that's the end of this story. It's from the Daily Cause. Now let me... from Tampa Bay Times, Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper. On the 29th, University teacher fired who tweeted blame of Harvey on the Texas GOP vote. A tweet suggesting that the devastation of Hurricane Harvey was instant karma for the red state of Texas has cost the University of Tampa, used to have an associate of ours, that was a professor there, Doc Holliday. Anyway, his job making him the latest academic fired for off-duty speech. The university first distanced itself from the sociology professor, Kenneth L. Story, on Monday, but tide of online outrage continued. A fire story hashtag there, and angry Facebook comments piled up. Don't think this is a school we are looking for my daughter. It's not that great a school anyway. We condemn the comments and the sentiment behind them, and understand the pain this irresponsible act has caused. That's a spokesman for the university. Story told the Tampa Bay Times that while saddened, he understood the decision. He got caught up in today's political climate, he said, and knows now that every 40-character post needs to be able to stand on its own. What they see in those tweets is not who I am, he said. How I worded it was wrong. I care about people. I love this country. I would never want to wish harm upon anyone. The university had no clear policy on protection for speech like stories, said longtime communications professor Greg Bachman. So the tweets were impulsive, immature, and insensitive, Bachman said. He flinched at seeing a fellow professor fired amidst a blurry boundary. I feel a single chill in the air over this, Bachman said. I want to see a policy that, if not there, I want to develop one because faculty can feel exposed like this. Meanwhile, a group that fights for civil liberties in academia has taken up the issue. Disappointed that the University of Tampa caved in to pressure of outage mobs online. The university seems to decide, well, it's not worth the trouble of sticking up for faculty members' rights, and that's troubling. That's Ari Cohen, an attorney with the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. Story was an adjunct professor at University of Tampa since 2011. His first semester as a visiting assistant professor. So your adjunct professor was the title Barack Obama had, and then he was elevated to an assistant professor, and evidently he did not have, from this article they'll say, didn't have tenure. You got to have tenure. Anyways, in a follow-up, he said the good people in the red states like Texas and Florida need to be more to stop the evil their state pushes. He continued, I'm only blaming those who supported the GOP, wheelchair, Abbott, etc. Story's name was added to a website called Professor Watchlist, a project to expose and document college professors who discriminate against conservative students. Well, he was not involved in conservative students. Nonetheless, let me get Paula's article here. On New Orleans. We won't deal with insanity here, from the LA Times. Now, this is an interesting article she sent over. 5 things non-Houstonians need to understand about Harvey's flooding. I'll go right to them very, very quickly here. The streets in many public parks, this is in Houston, are designed to flood. We set 35 feet above sea level, and most of the city is as flat as a pool table. They average about 50 inches of rain a year. They got that in about a day or two. The streets and parks serve as temporary retention ponds and accommodating slow and steady rain throughout the bayous. We average about 50 inches of rain a year, but in the last 48 hours, many areas of Houston received 25 to 30 inches of rain. Officials are calling this the 800-year flood. The reason is there is a 1 in 800 chance of it occurring. Well, it did occur. This is by Michael Harity. Anyway. Let's see. Number 3. It's impossible to evacuate a city the size of Houston, Harris County, 1,700 square miles, a population of 6.5 million people. How do you evacuate 6.5 million people? During the hours leading up to Hurricane Rita, another hurricane landfall, tens of thousands of Houstonians attempted evacuation. The traffic jams last for days. 100 people died. So far, only 6 have died in Hurricane-Harvey. Texans helped elect an anti-big government. We talked about this. President, and now we're going to need big government's help. This is one of the things about the Texas delegation. Lion Ted Cruz to be one. Lion Ted voted against aid for the storm Sandy on the East Coast, hit New Jersey there. Of course, Two-Ton Christie, the governor of New Jersey, went ballistic, and he was criticized for cooperating with the President Barack Obama. So, thus, in New York, they were hit there, and now Texas is there. You're going to feel this. Gas prices are skyrocketing, refining products, everything from PCV pipe to dry cleaning fluid will arise. The stock market will take a hit. New Orleans is a fantastic city, but not the major economic force. Houston's the center of the nation's energy industry. It is home to a dozen of the Fortune 500 companies, Exxon, etc. About 85% of it is under the water. Literally, it may be this way for weeks. The aftermath of Katrina captured the world's attention. The aftermath of Harvey is going to grab you by the lapels and shake you up and cross your eyes, and it'll be forgotten about. DJ Trump, incidentally, is traveling around now pretending he's compassionate. Mr. Haggerty here, Haggerty, I'm sorry to get his name right, is senior producer for Houston Matters. He has a degree in journalism from Abilene Christian University, serves as news director for NPR and PBS stations around Texas and the West, including KUNR-FM in Reno, Nevada, and KWBU TV-FM in Waco, Texas. We thank the judge, Paula, for sending this over to us. Now let us move back here to our wraparound. We have Uncle Carl Robe. No doubt he's always around. And let's see. We have to get this Georgia legislator here. The talk of ditching the Confederate flag statue, could cause a Democrat to go missing. This is according to a lawmaker. He warned a Democratic former colleague who criticized his support for Civil War monuments on Facebook that she would be met with torches, but something a lot more definite if she continues to call for removal of statues. This guy's name is Jason Spencer. He's Woodbine Republican, wherever that is, and he was talking about LaDon Jones, a former legislator, that the people in South Georgia are people of action, not drama, and suggested that some don't understand that will go missing in the Okefenokee. That's a swamp there. Jones, who represented the Atlanta-based district from 2012 to 2016, responded that she saw his remark as a threat of physical violence. No doubt it was. Enjoy, but no, winter is coming, wrote Jones, who is an African-American. You know it too, otherwise you would have found a need to ever make this post of those threats not coming to South Georgia. Spencer said in a text that his words were not meant to be a threat, instead of warning to her of how people can behave about the issue. She's from Atlanta, and the rest of Georgia sees the issue very differently, said Spencer, who was elected in 2010 to represent Southeast Georgia district, but just trying to keep her safe if she decides to come down and raise hell. Spencer also asked that we include pictures he provided of us standing in front of the Martin Luther King's memorial, unveiled on Monday in the Capitol grounds. The refuge of a blagger. If it were any one other than Jason Spencer, then I would be alarmed. But he has a unique relationship with the Georgia legislature, said Jones, who served there. If that comes from anyone else, I'd take it as a serious threat. This is from the Atlanta Constitution on the 30th of August. Now let us move along here. We'll come back to the poor nurse and what happened to her out in Utah. And we'll go to Uncle Carl Robe. This is finishing up our Katrina coverage from Corpus Christi to Port Arthur. The Texas Gulf Coast has been hit by a natural disaster of biblical proportions. I ran into a God boy last night around the tea talking about religion, and he was an evangelical, and he wondered why I was an atheist. I said, well, you've been an atheist for a long time. And he went on to tell me about his little organization. I said, well, you support DJ Trump. Where does that stand in terms of your quote-unquote moral compass? They like to talk about those things. He had no answer for me. Entire towns like Rockport and Arkan Pass look like bombed-out war zones. Houses are smashed to bits, with roofs torn off and water pouring in through the doors and windows. Survivors wait out the storm in closets, bathtubs, and second floor bathrooms. Boats sunk at their decks were reduced inside of their storage sheds to heaps of crumpled metal and etc. there. As garages collapsed, SUVs and pickups were crushed. Their trucks and front grills titled and sucking out the water. Anyway, the wind was so powerful that it peeled thick steel plates off of giant oil storage tanks. An American flag was ripped. Boy, this is like it was written out of Hollywood casting from its pole and left in tatters in a power line. 18-wheelers were flipped on their side and thrown across the highway. Trees were short of their leaves, so they look like they're in mid-February and not August. Then there are the enormous brown, swirling, ugly expanses of water covering roads, turning neighborhoods into lakes, etc. Yet the record-shattering hurricane brought out the best in Texas. That's to be debated. But anyway, neighbors have created a human change to help them, no doubt about that, which is good. A TV reporter flagged down a sheriff's car to implore the officer to save a trucker. Tucked under an overpass, whose cab was filled with water. No one was left behind, not even the pets. The Texas Navy and the Cajun Navy volunteer rescue squads appeared with fishing boats, jet skis. Boy, amongst the ranks were oilfield salesmen from Victoria, about 125 miles away. Kayaks, they had those too. When his town was put under mandatory evacuation, he headed towards Houston, towing his boat behind his pickup. And anyway, every Texan knows someone Harvey has heard. A woman I used to work with took her family to a shelter after rising water. The ranch house of other friends of mine, which took 8 years to build, was near the eye of the hurricane at coastal Bend and torn apart in minutes. Texans are gritty people who believe in toughing it out no matter what's thrown our way. I thought he was from Colorado. Anyway, this is Carl Rowe. We are resilient lot, and we'll rise again, but for now, there are more people to rescue, shelters to open, families to help, and by caring for our communities, Texas are providing America an inspiring civics lesson. We need every bit of tenaciety we can muster to work and serve and to help and care. The worst still may still be to come, but there is more rain, rising water higher than the slow recede. They are slowly receding into the Gulf, of course, of Mexico. The Mexican Navy came there. President DJ Trump was on Wednesday. Visit was toxic. His administration has been quick to provide the state, well, that always happens, with requests, but it is important to remember that under federal law, governors, not the feds, are in charge of disaster planning, relief, and recovery. And, of course, that means Wheelchair Abbott, who doesn't know what he's doing. He's just wheeling around there. And the problem with flood insurance is now, right now, it basically costs about $500 to $1,000. And on the private insurance schemes that they have, would come up with more costs for people, no doubt about it. From Reuters, DJ Trump will visit Texas and Louisiana. That is later today. He will travel to Houston, hasn't been there before, and Lake Charles, Louisiana, very conservative place there, to meet with victims of the catastrophic storm. This is Reuters. While he visits, attention will be focused on Minute Maid Park, where the baseball Astros, one of the best teams in baseball, played their first game. They were playing in St. Petersburg, Florida, since the fourth most devastated, the fourth most populous city in the U.S., that's Houston. The doubleheader, the Mets, the Metropolitan baseball team, known as the New York Mets, will be there. Expect to be worked with emotion and punctuated with memories to honor dozens who died as a result of it. The storm is one of the costliest to hit the U.S. Displaced more than 1 million people, 50 feared dead. We don't know what it is. And in Beaumont, a city of 120,000, the drinking water supply has been knocked out. That's not unusual in floods. It does happen to people there. Wheelchair Abbott, he's the governor, says the state may need more than $125 billion. The storm lingered around the Gulf of Mexico coast for days, dumping record amounts of rain, left devastation across 300 miles. That's 480 kilometers of the state's coast. In Orange, Texas, that's about 125 miles, 200 kilometers east of Houston. Sam Doherty returned Friday, where waist high water remained in his backyard and barn. Oh, well. So these are all kinds of stories here. Harvey came on the 12th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, where 1,800 were killed. That was under the President G.W. Bush. Some of the tens of millions of people forced into shelters by Harvey attended the Astro game where the Houston mayor, Sylvester Turner, will throw out the first pitch. Mayor Turner evidently has done a very good job of what he could do. Some 440,000 Texans have applied for federal disaster assistance. Some 79 million have been approved so far. The storm shut down about a fourth of the refining capacity, that's of the country. So a spike in petrol gasoline there. And the average, according to AAA, is up about 8 cents at, $2.59. It's in most places up over $3. So in other words, that is it. Now, at the same time, another storm is coming. Imer has into a Category 3 hurricane on the Simpson Simpson scale. It remains hundreds of miles from land, but it's forecast to hit Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti the middle of next week. So it's on its way to South Florida also. From the Washington Post, looked at a number of articles here. We won't get into the deal that DJ Trump wanted with. DJ Trump himself is toxic. I'll wait here to get NAFTA talks, incidentally, with Mexico. They're in their second stage. The Mexicans now have a plan, a risk avert plan. In 4 days of the NAFTA, that's free trade talks open, many numbers will be branded about to the dismay. One of them, $63 billion, stands above all the rest. That's the size of the trade deficit. We talked about that on Numbers Man in terms of deficits there and where deficits are. Yeah, if you refer to that show, this is trade deficits, not necessarily Mexico. But Mexican close to negotiation, many former experts said simply the wrong number to worry about. No doubt about that. This is Econ 1. We know you cannot measure the trade agreement based on deficit. Account deficits is what we were talking about. The deficit is just one of many areas. And they're taking place at, of all things, the Hyde Regency in Swank, Polico neighborhood of Mexico City. Technical teams from the U.S. and Canada are all there. And the focus on trade and deficit in goods, they're talking about that. For the U.S., $63 billion. Deficit with Mexico is smaller than the U.S. deficit with other countries like China, $309 billion. Germany, $67 billion. That's according to statistics from the Bureau of Economic Analysis of the Commerce Department. So much to be written here. Many Americans, including Republicans, have similar points. James Lofton, he's from Oklahoma, and a co-op Ed Peace in the Post that the trade deficits are not always bad for U.S. workers and consumers, nor they remain the focus of the negotiations. So this is one of those things that a flag is put up there that should not be there, and it's not exactly fake news, but at the same time it hampers real progress. Let's see what else we got going here. Oh, we'll give the numbers. This was on a Friday. We don't have any for today. DJ Trump at 34 in the Gallup poll, at 42 in Rasmussen. In case you missed it, we'll do this review anyway. At Fox News, he was at 41. At Reuters, at 37. At YouGov, 40. And let's see what else going here. We won't even give the congressional approval rating because it's meaningless. YouGov has the Democrats up by 8 on the generic ballot. And what else is going on here? 49-48 on Obamacare is the margin of error there. Let us do the baseball scores from last night. Cleveland was in the Motor City. Cleveland over the Tigers 3-2. Atlanta was in a Wrigley Field and was shut out by the Cubs 2-0. Mr. Lackey was the winner. And the Red Sox were in New York. Red Sox 4-1 over the Yankees in a 13. Long game there in Camden Yard, and the Blue Jays were finally shut out 1-0 by Toronto. The Phillies and Marlins in Florida. Phillies finally win that one 2-1. Phillies had 6 hits, no errors, and the Marlins 4 hits, no errors. Cleveland and the Tigers in the second game, they shut out the Tigers 10-0. the Angels and Rangers in Texas. Very close game there. Rangers 10-9 over the Angels of Los Angeles. The Rays and White Sox on the south side of Chicago. Rays 3-1. The Nationals and Brewers in Milwaukee. Nationals were shut out 1-0. The Royals and Twins in Minnesota. Royals 7-6. The Lions score. The Royals 12 hits, 1 error, and the Twins 9 hits, no errors. They were rained out in the Mets and the Astros. They'll have a doubleheader. That was in Houston. They've started trying to get back to business. The D-backs and Rockies in Denver. D-backs 9-5 over the Rockies. The Athletics and Mariners in Seattle. Mariners 3-2 over the Athletics. The Dodgers and Padres down in San Diego. Dodgers 1-0. Mr. Kershaw is back. He got the win. Kenley Jansen got the save. And finally, the Cardinals and Giants in San Francisco. This was a very good game up till the later endings, and then, of course, the Cards exploded. 11-6. Cards had 15 hits, 1 error. And the Giants had 11 hits and no errors. So that is that. Let's give the standing here while we got some time. Starting with the American League East, the Red Sox are on top. The Yankees are 5.5 games back. The Orioles are 8 games back. I don't know, I guess we call it some kind of race. In the Central, Cleveland is on top. This is the American League. The Twins are 8 games back. The Royals 11.5 games back. In the West, the Astros, all Astros, and then the Angels are 12 games back, and the Texas Rangers are 13.5 games back. In the National League, it's the Nationals and the Marlins are 15 games back. Not much of a race there. In the Central, the Cubs are up there on top. The Brewers are 3.5 games back. The Cardinals are 6 games back. And, of course, the Pirates are 11.5. They're pretty much out of it unless lightning strikes or something. In the West, it's all Dodgers. The nearest contender is the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're 16 games back. And the Rockies are 12.5 games back. The poor Giants are 41 back. And the Padres 32.5. We'll have some college scores coming up here. Let's just go there and we'll see how this starts to shake out as they kick off their season this weekend in college football. And hopefully we'll get that. We don't. Here we go. The first of 6 college playoff rankings will be revealed, and that won't be till the 13th of October. But the gist of it is, and they talk about some memorable things going on here. The best chances to win each power conference: the Big 12, Oklahoma at 72, the Big 10, Ohio State at 71, the SEC, Bama at 49, and Florida State at ACC at 38, and Stanford at 35 for the Pac. What are they these days? The Pac-12. Best chance to win with one loss and no loss: Ohio State 76%, Alabama at 41%, Oklahoma at 30%, Wisconsin, they come in this at 28%, and Stanford at 27%. So who knows? I mean, those are the teams that they see now. This could change. And let's see, on a Saturday on ESPN, number 3 Florida State and number 1 Alabama. That'll be on ABC and ESPN. And we'll have Ohio State at Indiana. That'll be at 8 o'clock. I guess it's the same time. They're number 2. And what else is going on here? Michigan, number 11 at number 17, Florida. BYU versus number 13, LSU. They're still in the hunt also. That will be on Saturday also at 9:30 Eastern Time. And West Virginia and Virginia Tech. Remember Mr. Michael Vick and Virginia Tech. Anyway, those are some of the things that are going on. We'll see you on the Boston Red part of this situation on the Monday morning quarterback. We'll have special Labor Day presentation on a Sunday. Numbers man will come up more than likely later today. And we'll try to throw in an open source report because we've been sort of tardy in our open source reporting. And rounding it up, we should have a pretty good Labor Day show. I've been looking at some of the things, the fight for 15 in various states in the Midwest, and other things going on in terms of Bernie Sanders and his movement, the New American Revolution, supporting local candidates. That's a maximum of one Thomas Tip O'Neill, the late Thomas Tip O'Neill, who was a Speaker of the House, represented Boston. That all politics are local. Very interesting situation there. And wait a minute here. We have something from Mr. Cook, Charlie Cook. We can find Mr. Cook. Can the marriage be saved? This is Amy Walter. She was writing on, excuse me, the 30th of August. DJ Trump is always revered in being an outsider. His candidacy was a sharp rebut to the elites, the establishment, the status quo, instead of relying on tried and dysfunctional institutions to bring a change. He boasted as the GOP's convention, "I alone can fix it." Well, he's still been talking about he can fix it. I alone, the candidate that is morphed into a lonely presidency. He is adopted. He and his adopted party never one to turn the cheek. No doubt, he lashes out at everyone, including members of his own party, who criticized him. Recent New York Times story detailed building frustration and something of a Cold War between Trump and old man McConnell, the leader in the Senate. The ouster of Steve Bannon over Charlottesville and has returned to the right wing. She calls it conservative, right wing. Breitbart to wage an open war on establishing Congress and globalists within the administration. A recent Gallup poll pegs the president's approval rating with Republicans, and this is a very important situation. He's still at 78%. That's a drop of 7 points. Not very much at all. But the party is struggling to stay unified. It shouldn't be surprising, since Trump camped the nomination. Who wonders if the party could ever unite behind a candidate? New poll from Pew finds that 67% of Republicans agree with Trump on many or nearly all issues facing the country. Just 34% say they like the way Trump conducts himself as president. Almost half, 46% of Republicans, say they have mixed feelings about Trump, but they have to go along. In other words, DJ Trump is the only show in town, and that's something to be remembered. And the policies that DJ is pursuing, including the privatization of flood insurance, are things Republicans have talked about for many years. The same situation they like to talk about other things too. Witnesses strained firsthand. Eyewitnesses, this is Amy Walter talking, at a focus group this week in Pittsburgh, conducted by Peter Hart for Emory University. And of the 12 voters in the room, 6 had voted for Trump, a national disgrace. At least 2 of them were reluctant Trump voters who admitted publicly they chose Trump as the lesser of 2 evils. Or I guess Hillary to Clinton. All admitted to being disappointed with him in some way, but their disappointments were about personnel and personalities, not policy. And that's very important, that they still are with the right-wing policy. And this is what Trump has done. I thought he was would be a quick learner. As from David said, that as a business person, he picked up top-notch people for jobs. That's bull. Well, anyway. It hasn't happened. Brian and Christine were disappointed in his lack of presidential temperament. Well, he never showed that as a candidate. These voters, Hart noted in a brief for reporters, were willing to forgive Trump's behavior as a candidate because he was running against Hillary Monster Clinton. When he attacked her, he was seen as a warrior fighting against what people saw as the enemy. Well, yeah. Now he's got different enemies. What defines Trump's presidency thus far is not us, but him. Well, it's always been about him. While the Pittsburgh voters wanted to see a different, more restrained and focused president, many of his core supporters want more of the same, no doubt about that. The Pew poll, again, a little over half, 54% of those who approve of Trump is doing cited aspects of his personality there, and so forth and so on. Let's see if I can finish this up. Having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Sometimes you have this, and we'll quickly go down and finish this up here. Nonetheless, Trump ever reunited? Can he ever reunite the Republicans behind him? As I wrote the other week, despite his struggles, he still has pretty decent approval ratings on the economy. Well, that is going to change in that, and pay a lot of attention to that, but September is usually traditionally a difficult week for the market. And that coupled with a high price of petrol, gasoline, that will weigh in, no doubt, on consumer discretionary spending. But I suppose the silver lining, even the cloud, we go to clouds now, is that petrol won't be available in many places. So, but again, that has a different consequence. Not as much traveling. The hospitality industry will not usually get its Labor Day. The back-to-school buying, I guess most of that's over. So, as petrol goes up, you'd be surprised. 17, 18%, 18 cents, 20 cents is quite a bit if you are driving an SUV. Period. When asked what each of their most confident in, well, anyway, even skeptical voters in Pittsburgh said rebuilding the economy, that in itself is going to be a very, very hard issue. Nonetheless, Amy Waller was writing on the 30th of August 2017. Can the marriage be saved? She is with the Cook Report. She used to be the political director at ABC News. This does it for us. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on our Labor Day presentation. Good day.